It takes 21 days to form a habit. Some people say 18, some people say 21, some people say 30 days, some people say 60 days. So which one is it? Does it depend on the habit that one is trying to form, or does it depend on the person that's trying to form the habit? It turns out that there's excellent peer-reviewed data on this. There's a study published in 2010, first author Lally, L-A-L-L-Y. This study found that for the same habit to be formed, it can take anywhere from 18 days to as many as 254 days for different individuals to form that habit. The reason I bring this up is that I always get asked, is it true that it takes 21 days to form a habit? Is it true that your nervous system changes in 6 days when you're doing something repeatedly? And the answer is, as I mentioned before, it's highly variable. I want to spell out a particular system that I think could be very useful to most, if not all people, that's rooted in the biology of habit formation, rooted in the psychology of habit formation, and that is entirely compatible with that phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 type program that I talked about earlier, but encompasses a bit of a longer time scale and really arrives at a kind of a system, if you will, for how to build in habits and then to test whether or not those habits have really stuck and whether or not they're likely to stick going forward. And so this is, at least for sake of this example, a 21-day system. I picked 21 days because that seems to be the average or most typical system for engaging neuroplasticity as it relates to the formation of new habits. This 21-day system actually is one that someone I know very well uses and has used for a long time. They actually use their kids use it as well. And it has a certain elegance to it. And I think as I describe it, that elegance will begin to reveal itself. So basically what this involves is you set out to perform 6 new habits per day across the course of 21 days. Why 6 and why 21? Well, we'll talk about that in a moment. But the idea is you write down 6 things that you would like to do every day for 21 days. What phase of the day those things fall into? Well, that will depend on what they are and how they relate to those earlier phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But for now, 21 days, 6 things per day. However, the expectation is that you'll only complete 4 to 5 of those each day. Okay? So built into this is a kind of permission to fail, but it's not failure because it turns out that this approach to forming habits is based not so much on the specific habits that you're trying to form, but the habit of performing habits, right? It's the habit of doing a certain number of things per day. So you set out to perform 6. Now, another reason for not necessarily performing all 6 is that some activities probably shouldn't be performed each day. For instance, in my case, if I were to weight train or even run every day, I'm of the sort, or my biology is of the sort, that I don't recover so well. So I wouldn't want to do resistance training every day, but I might want to do it 4 days a week, for instance. So by having 6 things in that list, I could shuffle out that particular activity on particular days of the week and simply do 4 or 5 other activities. So 21 days, you list out 4 to 5 things. So it might be zone 2 cardio, resistance training, sunlight viewing, writing. It could be journaling. It could be learning a language, mathematics. Again, this is going to vary depending on your particular goals and the habits that you're trying to create. But no more than 6, and the expectation is that you're not going to perform more than 4 to 5. If you miss a day, meaning you don't perform 4 to 5 things, there is no punishment. And in fact, it's important that you don't actually try and do what in the literature is called a habit slip compensation, which is just fancy psychological language for if you screw up and you don't get all 4 or 5 in one day, you don't do 8 the next day in order to compensate. This actually brings me back to an example I had from graduate school. I remember when I started graduate school feeling very excited, but a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of things that I had to do because I had to both do research. I was doing coursework at the time. Graduate student stipends, and still now, unfortunately, were depressingly low. So it was financially stressful. There were a number of things happening. And I remember a neurologist, this was at UC Berkeley, a really fantastic scientist and person. His name is Bob Knight. Some of you may know him. I remember I went to him and I asked, what is the process by which someone actually navigates graduate school successfully? And he said, listen, you don't want to do anything or engage in a routine in any way that you can't keep up consistently for at least 5 and ideally 6 days per week. I thought, that's pretty good. And he said, every 4 or 5 years, you might have to update that, but you need to decide what you can do consistently, what you can do every day or at least 6 days a week or 5 days a week. And that was very, very useful to me. And it fits well with this notion of habit slips, that if you happen to screw up and not be able to engage in whatever habits you're trying to learn for whatever reason, that the next day you just get right back on the horse, so to speak. However, there's a really interesting feature from the neuroscience literature and from the psychology literature that says that chunking this 21 days into 2-day bins can be very, very useful. While it is true that the unit of the day that our cells use is a circadian one, a 24-hour clock, there does seem to be something powerful about engaging in particular habits in a particular sequence for 2 days in a row and then resetting. So thinking, okay, I can do this for a day. And if I can do it for a day, I can probably do it for 2 days and then resetting. So every 2 days, you're resetting. So you're chunking this 21 days into a series of 2-day bins in which you are trying to perform 4 to 5 new habits and then completing that 21 days. Now, everything I've described about this 21-day program with 6 things that you're trying to do as new habits and only performing 4 to 5 and not compensating, etc., there's nothing neuroscientifically unique about it, except for the fact that it's not just 21 days broken up into 2-day chunks. After 21 days, you stop engaging in this 21-day deliberate 4 to 5 things per day type schedule, and you simply go into autopilot. You ask yourself, how many of those particular habits that I was deliberately trying to learn in the previous 21 days are automatically incorporated into my schedule? How many of them am I naturally doing? In other words, every 21 days, you don't update and start adding new habits. You simply try and maintain the ones that you've built in that first 21 days. And this, I think, is extremely important because in all of the habit literature that I could find, sure, there was a lot of psychological data, neuroscience data, behavioral science data around here's how you form a habit, here's how you break a habit. There was even some kind of tests for whether or not a habit had really achieved context independence, whether or not it was a strongly formed habit. But there wasn't a lot of information, at least by my search, of what to do once you've formed a habit and how to evaluate whether or not that habit is likely to persist long into the future. So here's the idea. You set out these 6 things that you would like to learn or that you would like to acquire in your life, these habits. You only expect that you're going to perform 4 or 5 each day. You do that for 21 days. Again, if you miss a day, you just hop right back on the next day. However, you should think about the functional units within this 21-day period as 2 days. You're going to try and nail 4 to 5 of these things for 2 days. If you happen to get all 6, great, but that's not necessarily required. So you can do it for 2 days, then reset 2 days, then reset 2 days. And then in the next 21 days, you're not trying to acquire any new habits. You're not going to throw in 6 more habits that you want to learn. You're simply going to assess how well, how deeply you've rewired your nervous system to be able to perform those 6 habits of the previous 21 days. And this is extremely useful, I believe, because it will allow you to assess whether or not you can indeed make room, if you even have room, I should say, for more habits, right? Many people are trying to cram so many new behaviors into their nervous system that they don't stand a chance of learning all those behaviors. What you may find is that you kept up 2 of those things very consistently throughout the 21 days. And perhaps there was one of them that you did sporadically, and that there were 3 others that, frankly, you didn't manage to execute. You may also be one of these people, one of these mutants, that sets out to do 6 new things per day for 21 days and performs every single one of them. Terrific. More power to you. In that case, for the following 21 days, let's see whether or not you can continue to perform those very same 6 things every day for 21 days. And then, and only then, would you want to add more habits in.